This is episode number 508 of the Health and Fitness Podcast by InnerFight, brought to you in association with Smith Street Paleo. If you're not on a meal plan and you live in the UAE, you need to hop over to smithstreetpaleo.com right now. Welcome back to another edition of the show, folks. Now, for those of you that listen to the show often and listen to show number 484, I spoke to Tom Otten and Rob Jones just after they came back from UTMB Oman. There was one person missing from that show, which was a gentleman by the name of Sean Hurley, who is actually on today's show. Sean and I first met almost 20 years ago when we were playing rugby, and 18 months ago he called me up and said he wanted to get into ultra running. So I thought it warranted him having his own show to not only talk about UTMB Oman and the great time he had there, but also how he moved into ultra running. It was super awesome to sit down with Sean, and I really hope you guys enjoyed the show as much as I did. Sean Hurley joins me. Shauno, how are you, buddy?
Mate, good, thanks, yeah.
Mate,
thanks
finally got you.
Yeah. Nail me down.
Yeah, mate. We won't jump straight into UTMB because I think your story is a lot more interesting than Otten's and Rob Jones's. Plus, they've been on the show before. Mate, talk to us a little bit. We used to play rugby together.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we did.
Probably the first time 15 years ago, mate.
Yeah, probably something like that, I think. Jeez, you've got a better memory than I do. Yeah. I think we met in about 2001. I think when you were here still. We were playing against each other. You were at the Exiles.
That's
and
right.
I was at the Dragons. I think, and then the first time we played together was 2004, maybe?
Yeah, when we played for the Arabian Gulf. That's right.
That's right, Sevens.
So, mate, talk to us a little bit about your sporting background. Like, you obviously, for those of you that can't identify Sean's accent, he's from Australia. What was sport for you growing up, mate?
So, yeah, I mean, sport's been a huge part of the life. Growing up, actually grew up in Asia. My brother and I've got a twin brother. We were born in the Philippines, but we were always part of my old man sort of grew up around rugby. He was a rugby referee, and we sort of grew up around that. And doing various different sports, like anything you can kind of get your hands on, everything from rugby to cricket to even things as far as surf life saving, gymnastics, you name it. Like literally everything you can do as a kid, we sort of almost took part in. I
have to pick it up right now. Who won the most? You've got a twin brother. Yeah. Who used to win the most?
I mean, that's easy. Like, obviously.
Tell everyone who's the oldest.
Well, he is. He's 15 minutes older.
Yeah.
But we can get into... No, we won't get into that. He's older, but, we always had our own niche, except that both of us came back to rugby. So we were both, huge... I played rugby for, I think it was 35 and a half years of my life.
Wow.
And when you play a sport that long, it's part of your DNA. It's who you are. We were, I think, 4 years old when we first started running around with a ball, maybe 5 years old, something like that.
Yeah. And
so, that was a huge part of my life.
What was it? To play a sport for that long, mate, you've got to actually enjoy it. Because I know you weren't very good, so we'll come to that. But no, mate, what was it about rugby that you really enjoyed?
Yeah, I mean, rugby is an amazing sport. So there's things about team environment. There's things about competitiveness. There's so much more to it than what I think maybe some people think. And I think one huge aspect of it. So there's a social side to it. There's then there's a competitive side to it.
Yeah.
For me, it was very much always about. I mean, our family was always involved in it. We all loved watching it. We all loved playing it. But it was also that. I think my brother and I were pretty good at it. And you always enjoy something that you're pretty good at.
Yeah.
It's just sort of in Australia when we were growing up, you play rugby in the winter, let's say, and then during the summer is something else, and that's either cricket or surf life saving, growing up on the beach or something. And both of them sort of complemented each other.
Right.
With rugby, you could take through your fitness from a summer season, from a surf life saving sort of season, and nippers and juniors, and you could take that through into the rugby season.
So it's almost like your off season's pre-season,
kind of,
for that, because you're so active. Yeah, I can't really say that about cricket in the UK. I think that's why I ditched it when I was
Pretty much I was the same.
We got forced to play cricket, I think, till I was about 13, and then we got to choose, and I was like, why would I not want to sprint? Like, I used to run the 1,500 meters, which would take, 4 or 5 minutes at that age. And a cricket game could take they'd start like sometimes 11 in the morning and still be going at 7 in the evening.
Mate, I think I was horrible at cricket as well.
Yeah.
I probably wasn't that good. I think, remember when I was about 13 years old, I had, and this is when you're a young fella, you had to, a game would only go half a day. But
yeah.
I think when you got to like 30 runs, you had to retire.
Right.
Because you had to give other people. And so I think I got to 30 runs once and I thought, yeah, this is amazing. I love this sport. And I think after that, I probably only got 1 or 2 runs as a batter. And so it was like, this sucks. I'm leaving.
Interesting sport, man. I obviously love watching it. And obviously England and Australia have battles, as do all. And it's great to watch. But the thought of someone just bowling a incredibly, for those of you that don't really know what cricket is or haven't experienced it, but it's not a steel ball because it's a leather ball, but it's incredibly hard. And the bowler, for the most part, especially obviously the speed bowlers, are just trying to bowl this thing at you as hard as they can. And there's no rules except it's not supposed to hit the head, and you've got literally 2-inch bit of plywood to smack it back at them.
Exactly. And when we were younger, so my brother and I, when we were expats in the Philippines, and I don't know if anyone knows that it was a very American sort of a town, growing up as Yanks. Well, growing up as young fellas, and we sort of started playing baseball.
Right.
So when we moved back to Australia for schooling, we thought, okay, this is kind of a natural thing, moving into cricket and whatever else. Very different game.
So different.
Yeah.
In baseball, though, you're supposed to pitch it over between
like your shoulders or your chest and maybe your pelvis. It's like an area.
And you sort of stand back from the plate, and they have to bowl it over the plate.
That's right.
And I'm not saying baseball's easy but cricket, So cricket was out the window, mate. You're into
and
nippers.
so I think when you're growing up, you sort of, as young guys, you're going through different sports of progression, hand-eye coordination. You're learning being active, and so all these different sort of sports sort of develop a competitiveness in you.
Yeah, right.
So whether you play whatever sport it may be, and I think that's what happened with my brother. And also maybe we were twins. We were always competitive with each other just to be better with each other. Yeah. And so that's kind of what's always driven us in our life.
Did you think it always drove you, mate? Can you remember any times where you were where you thought it was negative?
No, not at all. I mean, like I say, it was always driving us together for a competitiveness between each other, but in a positive way.
Yeah.
And it's not like we wanted to beat each other. We kind of did, but we were always, because you're playing team sports, you're on the same team.
Yeah, right.
Or, if it was individual at swimming, you would, which I was a better swimmer, but
Sorry,
you would,
mate.
You would always want to be.
One of my clients. You've got to be good to him.
But you'd always want to be competitive, and so and I think, and that's not a bad thing.
Yeah.
To sort of grow up with, and that's why, like I say, sport was a huge part of our life.
Yeah, right.
And obviously, I was always driven because of my brother.
You must have had times, though, mate, where you fell out over sport and didn't speak to each other, or got in trouble with your mum,
not at all.
Really?
No, not at all. I don't remember that, at least. We were, so like having a twin is an amazing thing. So it's like, he's your mirror, but he's also your best mate.
Right.
And you push each other, you egg each other on. Yeah. I mean, you always have tiffs as young fellas or whatever, but nothing like
big
that.
bust-ups.
No, nothing like that.
Mate, talk to us about the impact. Obviously, you said there, your dad was really into sport. He was a ref. How do you think that, impacted you? And is it an environment thing? Was it just? Do you feel that you were forced, or what's your thoughts on the sort of parenting side of it?
Yeah, there was. I definitely don't think it was forced. It was it was, obviously it's the surroundings you're in.
Yeah.
And my parents have always sort of been very supportive. So whatever we do, doesn't matter what we've done.
Yeah.
It's always been the support that's there. And so I remember Mum, and she would always sort of have to drive us down to Brisbane or to different games in Noosa, or always having to go out of the way to take us to a sporting event or whatever it may be. So super supportive, but not at all pushy, not at all like you have to do this, you have to train, you have to, not at all. And completely our own choice.
Wow. That's
so,
cool. But even though it's your own choice, they created this framework for you to be able to do.
Yeah, and it's support. So we could do whatever we wanted to, but it was just the support was there to say, okay, you want to do that? Great. This we'll take you here, we'll take you there, we'll get you this, whatever it may be. It wasn't endless, but it was, certainly very supportive.
Did you feel that you had to pay that back in any way, mate?
I mean, I think later in life not it's probably not the right way to say is pay back, but later in life you start to understand and respect what your parents went through to give you the opportunities and to give you what they gave you. And so very much so for my parents, I mean, they worked extremely hard to put us through schooling, and my sister as well. And so you start to realize and understand that, I think, when you're a little bit older. Yeah. And I just love my parents more for it.
Yeah, it's quite humbling, right?
It's very humbling.
Especially if you think about that, like you said quite a few things there, like, that we had the equipment, and we had, like, you look at what some of the fees may be right now for kids to go out and do sport. I mean, mate, I remember when I worked at Adidas and we were selling football boots, and, it could be about 1,200 dirhams for a pair of boots. I think Nike were the first ones that brought out the Mercurial just over. We didn't have that, I don't think, back in our day. I think if you had a pair of football boots that were like over $100, it was unheard of. But there was still a big investment from our parents to, we need the equipment, we need to be at matches, we need to pay for the coaching. And I think that's something that when you're that young, you maybe take for granted a little bit.
Yeah, completely. And it wasn't that we ever got the best kit or whatever it was, but it was always, if we needed it, we would get it, and it would be like, and I know now how hard they worked to give that to you,
make sure it was there.
And that's the amazing part of my childhood, that support for kind of a sporting outlook, and even now in a professional outlook or whatever I do now, my parents are always there to support. So I'm super grateful for that.
Yeah. Mate, what do you think? Let's reflect a little bit about what we're seeing on those sort of lines these days with kids in sport. Do you see it's different? Do you see an environment? Obviously now we've got a massive obesity issue. We've got a lot of fat parents kicking around, or parents that are not necessarily very sporty, or if you're still sporty and we're looking forward to getting into what you're doing, but these parents are leading a sedentary life, and we're kind of seeing this passed down onto the kids. What's your thoughts on that situation?
Yeah, wow, what a question.
No show notes for this guy, straight in.
It's a tough thing. I know a lot of guys and people with kids who are parents, but they're very young at the moment, and it's. You're completely right. I know, as an Australian point of view, we have a big issue with obesity and just diet and health. And even though we are, in inverted commas, a sporting country, it's definitely something which is becoming bigger and bigger of an issue in Australia.
Right.
If I look at, obviously, Dubai and the Middle East, you've always got... I think it depends on schools that you go here. Lifestyles are very different. The pressure on parents, I think, is certainly there. But I think, again, it depends on your culture as a society, or it's or where you've grown up. Yeah. Whether you're part of that, movement, or you say sedentary lifestyle or anything like that. I think it very much depends on how you've grown up. Yeah. And I like I say, I come back to Australia, and my parents are my roots there, but it is an active, sporty lifestyle. Yeah. Despite other challenges that go on.
Yeah. So it's tricky. It's definitely a tricky one.
It's a tricky one, and if you look at, like I say, if you look at Dubai, the sort of initiatives that was trying to happen here and change, not just the local population, the Emiratis, but just everyone here. Yeah. Trying to change the outlook on health and movement and the benefits behind it. I think, fair play to the government.
Yeah, they're doing a good job.
They're doing a good job compared to maybe other governments in the world who, so they're...
I think it's different here, though, like when you live under what we live under, which is dictatorship. It's like,
Yeah.
I don't think Dubai is fattest by any means, but they're sort of able to pull stuff off and to make things happen. Whereas in other countries, it probably has to go through big committees, votes.
Yeah.
No, we can't do that in that place because it's not inclusive for this. I mean, Dubai is incredibly inclusive, for people with disabilities and for all of that stuff. But I think because it's a country that's got one single leader, they're able to activate stuff just so much faster. And I think that helps.
Yeah, completely agree. And it's interesting because you have so many different nationalities and cultures here.
Yeah.
And trying to get that aligned. And so, if someone picks up the torch, who the leader is, for example, Sheikh Majid, then people follow. And it's like that's kind of almost all you need in a town like this.
It's very easy to get that catalyst.
Yeah.
Interesting. Mate, let's go back a little bit to your rugby days, because I definitely want to get onto your running. And I'll open this with the fact that when we played rugby together, running was probably the thing that you hated the most.
Mate, I probably think I still hate it. When you play rugby, it's very rare that you run any decent distance. Maybe a little bit in pre-season, but you might go for a 5K run or a 3K run. Or of course, you run a lot, but it's on a rugby pitch at training during the week.
Yeah.
And then if you're not doing that, you're in the gym getting a bit of strength work in.
Yeah.
So it's not a huge part of the activity or the training for rugby. And so, growing up, I never did much running at all.
No school cross country.
You would participate, but have those days, but it wasn't something that I actually went out and did and thought, I love this. This is great. Not at all.
No chance, huh?
No.
So, mate, I think it was in September of 2017, you called me about an event. Tell us what you said. I want you to tell us because I think it's more interesting.
2018.
It was 2017.
You're right, sorry.
It was about September, wasn't it,
That's
of 2017.
Right. So I came back from vacation in August. I had previously retired from rugby, all forms of the game, in December of 2016.
Right.
So, having played rugby for, 35 odd years, and you're around a team environment, you're around that sort of day in, day out. So it's weekly, it's, it's a social environment as well as a competitive environment.
Yeah.
And when you step outside of that, when you retire from that game, you can still be involved, of course, and put everything in behind the club or however you want to be involved.
Yeah.
But it's not the same. When you hang the boots up,
yeah,
you're sort of on the outside, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Even though you may be friends with everyone. So,
yeah.
And that's very hard to replace, that sort of feeling or that social group. And, for, 6 months or so, I was kind of lost. I was like, you don't really have a sporting goal. You don't really have... Wait, why am I training? I'm not training for rugby anymore. But am I enjoying this? What? I was kind of on the search for something. And
were you, mate, in that period? Did you feel that you were developing bad habits? Were you eating? Because I think this is really cool for a number of people that have been involved or even just had an environment removed. So if they've just moved country and they don't have their team back home. What do? Listen to the next 20 minutes of the show. If there's a lot of that. So did you start to develop bad habits is the question there?
For sure. Yeah, and that's in hindsight, you look back at that. And so, you would, I thought I was always quite healthy, but you would, you'd go out and have weekends, big weekends, or you would, sometimes, you could get away with not cooking at home and you would eat out all the time. And so it's never one thing that you think is the bad habit, but it kind of sneaks up on you.
Yeah.
And then you turn around and you look in the mirror and you're trying to convince yourself that, oh, no, I'm still in good shape and I'm still quite healthy and I'm fit and strong, but actually you're not. And, or at least in my case, it was the truth. And I kind of went away on vacation summer and actually ended up going away with Tom Otten. And we went, we were in summer in Europe and got back from that and just kind of, I don't know what it was, but it was just a decision. It was like, I've got to change something.
Right.
And something has to change. And that had been going through my mind for a month or two. And then Tom and I got back and we had a meal together and had a discussion, and it was like, well, this is coming up, which is Marathon des Sables in Peru. And I remember when you guys sort of ran in Morocco a few years earlier.
Yeah,
I'd always
2015.
Yeah, and I always kind of had it stuck in my mind. That sounded like the best adventure ever. and I know everything, well, in hindsight again, but it's still, to me, it was an adventure. And I was like, that would be really cool to do.
Yeah.
And we had a meal, and we kind of just went, well, this is on at the end of December. And it was
So this is like literally end of August, beginning of September.
Start of September. It was maybe the 1st or 2nd of September, whatever the weekend was there.
Yeah.
And it was like, let's do it. And we decided. And so I woke up the next morning, and we still he messaged me, Tom messaged me and said, right, are you still in for this? And I'm like, done, we're in, let's do it. And then I think it was that day, went online and signed up and paid the money.
250 kilometers. It was a brand new race, actually. Marathon des Sables brand has previously done 32 races across the Sahara. Obviously, trying to grow the business, they stepped out and went to Peru. New desert, new challenge. What was it about that, mate? You said there like it was just this huge challenge. What was it that sort of struck? What was it that lit a fire for you in that big challenge?
It was a sense of a goal, so like you kind of, even though it wasn't that far away, I mean, it was 3 months. It was, problem. I mean, in my mind, it was like, I've got plenty of time to train for this. But it was a goal that was set in a time where I knew, okay, you know what? I can probably do this. There's probably a time frame. But it was also more than that. It was also an adventure.
Yeah.
And so it was kind of something, I don't know why, but it was something that I was looking for.
It probably filled the void, so to speak. I mean, you stopped playing in December.
Yeah.
We're now in August. Like, okay, couple of bad habits. You hadn't got massively out of shape, but there was a little bit of emptiness, right?
Completely. And it actually coincided also with my 40th birthday. And so I was like...
Perfect midlife crisis.
Yeah. And so, it was cheaper than buying a Porsche. Let's go for a run in the desert. So that was my midlife crisis.
Mate, when you sort of signed up for it, did you have... What did you think it was going to be?
Very interesting. I'd signed up for it. I remember calling you and saying, hey, listen, I think we're going to need some help with this. And you're like, great, no problems. Let's go for a run. It was early September, maybe, I don't know, the 3rd or 4th of September. Yeah. And it was yourself and Tom. Do you remember that? We went for a run along beach
right
track.
In front of me, yeah.
And probably the hardest thing I've ever done.
Yeah.
It was, I don't know. We went super early in the morning, but it was still 30 degrees or 35 degrees and 80% humidity.
5:56.
There you go. Yeah. And I haven't, obviously not being a runner, I hadn't run, but I was just not fit.
Yeah.
And so we were running at a conversational pace. If I think about it now, it was probably around about 6 minutes 30 a kilometre, maybe 7 minutes a kilometre. I don't know.
Yeah.
But my heart...
Very, very good. Very, very close stats here, Hills. It was 5:50 average, so it was a bit quicker.
All right, a bit quicker.
Yeah. But it started quite...
Relaxed.
Yeah.
And I remember my heart rate would have been around about 180... 190, even. I was in bits.
Yeah.
I was in bits and thinking, okay, what have I got myself into here? This I'm going to have to work hard.
Mate, the stats on that run, it started at 5:56 on the 7th of September here in Dubai, just by the surf house up there. And it basically, you ran 11K. You ran 11K in 1 hour, 16 minutes. So in the end, you average 650 a K with an average heart rate of 179 beats a minute. Bearing in mind, folks, Sean was turning 40 in 3 months from here, almost to the date.
Yeah.
And a max heart rate of 199.
There you go. I was like, okay, this running thing, I don't know if it's for me. That was
the first time you went over 10K, right?
First time in my life I probably ever went over 10, probably even over 5.
Yeah.
I just never ran that sort of distance.
I'd have you do something at the day before you'd done a little bit on a treadmill, mate.
Maybe, yeah.
You'd done 5K on a treadmill.
Yeah, we started on the 3rd or 4th or something like that.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So what's going through your mind, mate? You literally nearly die. You've got 2 other idiots who clearly know how to run a bit, and you're sat here looking at your brand new Garmin, which you've just paid 2,500 dirhams for. You sign up for a race which you've paid about £3,000 for, and your Garmin says 11K in 1 hour 16, average 179, max 199. Well, what's in your mind?
Mate, I knew it was going to be tough. But you know what? There wasn't one bit of me that didn't think I could do it. But it was just like, okay, well, I've got to start somewhere.
Try to figure out how we do it.
Yeah, that was the thing. It was like, okay, now let's just be smart about this and try and get it done. I was in. Like, I was in.
Yeah.
It didn't. I knew it was going to be. I knew it was tough, and I knew it was going to hurt, and I have to train and work hard. Not worried about hard work at all.
Yeah.
It was just that surprised me a little bit.
Yeah. I think it's probably an experience that is one of the best ways that you could have started, because it's brutal, but your attitude after that is like, yeah, I know it's going to be hard, but that's kind of why I signed up for it.
Yeah.
You know, it's not, I didn't sign up for it to be easy. I didn't quite realize it'd be this hard on the first day. But, you know, after that, it kind of gets more interesting. Mate, we won't go too much detail into the training for it, because I definitely want to get onto UTMBO, man. But just how was the race? I mean, you did 3 months from not even a 10K and a major knee surgery, which we've kind of skipped over like 18 months before, or less than 18 months before. And you're there, Peru, 250K. Give us a nice little spiel on it.
So I actually wrote a diary each night of that Marathon des Sables. I sort of committed to, like, every time when I got in the tent and we sort of, you know, were sleeping each night, I wrote a brief summary of it, and I read over it recently, actually, and it's interesting. Like, the race lived up to everything I wanted it to do, which was be an adventure.
Yeah.
And so there's different aspects about it. So there's the running aspect. There's the, Marathon des Sables. I haven't done the Morocco one, but I assume it's similar.
Yeah.
It's almost everything that's not running.
Yeah.
That is the key to that event.
Yeah, right.
And slowly, you know, since then I've done a few other races, and it's each race is very different.
Yeah.
And so ultra running, you can't just throw into a book or into a bag and say, yeah, this is ultra running.
Yeah.
Because it's very, very
so different, right? Yeah.
And so that experience down in Peru was amazing. You know, we went down. There was 3 of us actually. Myself and Tom had trained a lot together, and there was another guy from Dubai. Sort of we got to know, and we did a few training runs with him. And of course, with your help, we sort of were out in the sand and in the desert. You know, slowly we put together a training program, and it got longer and longer and more in the desert, and a couple of overnights and a few things like that. And so I remember being so I remember being so scared of it. It would wake me up sometimes at night that I would try and, like, I think that's a good thing. Like, you want to put yourself out there, and you want to put yourself in completely uncomfortable places in your life, and that's what I did with this. And I did so much research. I got super geeky about things. I wanted to learn about nutrition. I wanted to learn about recovery, because I knew I only had a short period of time. And so I looked at everything I could to help me recover faster, to help me train for my nutrition, through everything from meditation to nutrition, you name it. I started listening to it. I started reading it.
I remember you started coming up with ultra running podcasts that I've never even heard of.
Yeah.
You're like, man, I've got this one. I'm like, where do you even get that from?
Yeah, and so I got super geeky about it, and kind of, you know, there was some things where I took which was super, you know, you could literally apply to every single day of life, or you could literally apply to, that will help you on this run, or in this situation. And so it's very functional stuff. And so I just got into it, and that's how much it scared me. And so, and that gave me the goal, and that gave me the drive to want to do it. And I felt energized by it. And that was the thing, is I needed that goal, which, funnily enough, I found in this sport which I'd hated my whole life, which is running.
Yeah, that's what's weird, mate, because the principles that you're talking about that motivate you, having a goal, having a challenge, having something big, obviously are huge in ultra running. But I think you lie a bit now because you probably do actually like it a bit. But, at the start, mate, I know you hated it.
Yeah.
So it's like we're feeding this guy things that he likes through a sport that he just doesn't like. It's quite an interesting situation, isn't it? And I guess that's why people grow to start liking or loving ultra, because all the plus points far outweigh some of the fact that you have to run, I guess.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, it's true. And so if we come back to MDS, the thing which I took away from it the most is I thought, okay, an adventure, this is going to be the key. I thought, and I signed up for various different reasons. But what I took away from it was completely unexpected. And so what I mean by that is it was the weeks after and the months after that I was learning more about myself that became the unexpected, I suppose, consequences of running that event. Yeah. So what I mean by that is I thought it was going to be an amazing thing to cross the line and get a medal. I thought that was it. I thought that was the key. Yeah. But the reason I've done more since then has been you learn a lot about yourself.
Yeah.
And
you don't learn much on the finish line.
You don't. No. Finish line, you're happy. And and when you go through a race, there's so many different emotions you put yourself through.
Yeah.
And but it's the learnings, I think, after the fact for me that has really sort of, I don't know, just captivated me or kept me inspired. It's like I swore I would never do something like, when you finish a race or something that hurts, you kind of go, oh yeah, I'll never do that again.
Yeah.
A few weeks later, maybe a month later, that thought sort of disappears.
This is kind of what happened, because you finished that in December, and then I said, have you had any thought? And no, maybe just give Dubai Marathon a hit. And you did that, and you did a great time. And then it was like, well, now what, mate? And no, I'm not sure. But then I think the mind just starts going, doesn't it? It's like
it's sort of a snowball effect. And so, like I say, I learned a lot about myself, particularly. There was one day in particular, and there was almost one moment in MDS I can sort of take it down to.
Yeah.
And there was on day 4, which is the long day in MDS. People know it. Anyway, long story short, I hit the wall, very dehydrated. Body was shutting down in various different ways. And I was in a really dark place, really, really dark place. I was lucky I had Tom, who was with me, and he was kind of helping drag me through it. But there was 2 or 3 things in my mind which were my whys of why I was going into MDS. And my mind just kept circling back to remember your why, your why. And there was, my partner now, Bronte, she was on my mind, and my family is on my mind, and things like this just kept coming back to me, and it just reinforced the reasons what I was doing. Yeah. And ultimately, it got me through it. I mean,
did you wish in that situation, mate, that you weren't there?
Not at all. Right. Not for 1 second.
Yeah.
There wasn't 1 second that I did not want to be there. It hurt, and you're in trouble, and stuff starts going wrong. But there wasn't 1 second I didn't say, I'm not going to not finish this. Yeah. But you got to dig and look for those reasons. You got to look for those reasons why you're there. And for me, there was. I mean, it's all completely personal.
It's incredible.
But that's what drove me. And then subsequently, later on after that, as I went into Dubai Marathon, I had no idea what a marathon was. Okay, let's go run this. and then what I'd done after that is over Christmas I didn't have a goal, so I was like, okay, let's do Dubai Marathon. It's in January. Yeah. And then I'd also signed up to the Hajj 100. And I signed up to it before the marathon. And I was glad I did that because I swore after the marathon I'd never run again.
It's a wild race
interesting.
I mean, and folks, like, I don't know, it's difficult sometimes to explain to people. People think, marathon is hard. Okay, marathon's hard, but like the Hajj 100 is like something. It's just so different. Like every trail race, you said it, every ultra race is different. But I think it's difficult for people to actually understand the difficult the difficulty of something like the Hajar 100.
Yeah, so Marathon des Sables is very different. The landscape is very different, and when you were training me, when we were leading up to that, we did very specific things to get the body used to it, running in the sand, doing different exercises.
Yeah.
And then leading, over Christmas, I kept running. I did the marathon great and whatever, and then the Hajar 100 was the first time I had no idea what I was doing.
Yeah.
And I went into it zero.
Yeah.
I knew I'd have to take some water, and I knew I took my Camelback or some nutrition and I knew I kind of had to do that, but I had no idea, and I went into it, and over the first 50 Ks of that course, it's there's a lot of climbing involved, and the terrain is very different to running in the desert, and it just destroyed me, and I got to a point in that race as well, and I kind of just went, this why? And I think it took me like 4 hours to go 8 kilometers at one point.
Yeah.
And it was just because the vert was so high and there was no water and I didn't prepare for it. But I kept going through that and I made it to the end, and it was, again, it was so different, and I learned so much about myself just from that one.
Yeah.
And again, like MDS and like the Hajar and even the marathon to an extent, you choose to put yourself in that situation.
Yeah, right.
And you choose to say, you know what, I'm going to go and do this.
Yeah.
I think I'm quite stubborn, and so,
I think that's, in these situations, a massive positive, though, mate, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think as a person, I'm quite stubborn. If I want to go and do something, I'll try and do it. And I was, even in the Hajar, I'd got to the 50, and I'd already said to myself in my mind, I was probably at 38 Ks, I'm like, I'm done. And it's amazing where the mind takes you.
Yeah, right.
My mind was telling me, you know what? Just roll your ankle on this rock, or pretend to roll your ankle on this rock. Wow. And there's an exit strategy right there. And just, and then, just at the next checkpoint, you're out. And then you get to the next checkpoint, and then, the stubbornness kicks in. Or you're like, you know what? I'm not dead. I may as well go down to the 50.
Right.
I may as well get down to that checkpoint at the halfway, and then I'm out. And I'd convinced myself I was out. I was done. I was cooked. I was done. I was out. And then I got down there, and you kind of start eating a little bit, and you have a drop bag, and you're getting some other sort of food in you, and then it's like, well, maybe I can go to the next checkpoint, and we'll just see from there. And so, but that's the thing. I had no idea what I was getting into, and I had no idea that this was going to happen to me. But it was. But I remember clearly I was done, and my mind was telling me, all right, you can roll your ankle here and just be out. You can tap out. Yeah. There's no need to keep going. And it's what the body. Why
did you keep going then? How do you keep going, mate? Because people are listening, and go, I get you, and then you stop, but you didn't.
Again, I think it comes down to pride and your why.
Yeah.
And doesn't matter what race in the world you sign up to, whether it's a 4K, a 10K, a 50K, doesn't matter if you cycle, doesn't matter if you're a triathlete, a rugby player, I don't know, but you've got to have a reason why you're choosing to put yourself in that situation. Because at the end, you choose to put yourself there.
Yeah, it's a choice. You could be anywhere. You could be at the bar.
Exactly. Nobody puts you up to it.
Yeah.
And so, I kind of looked inside and went, well, I've decided to do this. Maybe it's my stubbornness, maybe it's whatever. It's like, or pride. Maybe it's pride and ego. I don't know. But it's like, I don't want. It's in my control. I did a body check. You know what? My ankles are fine. Everything hurts a little bit, but okay, no problem. I'm not going to die if I keep moving forward. Yeah. So it's like, okay, let's keep going. Well, let's just go to the next checkpoint and then go from there. And kind of that's how I took it step by step.
Incredible.
And that's kind of where I learned from the Hajar, where I was like, okay, and then we did a few other things during the year as well. Yeah. And I just kept building on that learning each time.
Yeah, and just picking up the tricks, mate. You picked up a fair amount of tricks, and this is what's actually, for me, really the most mind-blowing about the whole thing is that at the end of 2018, so literally a year after you'd done your first ultra race, on the same weekend, you entered a race that I think on the outset a lot of people took a little bit lightly, the Oman by UTMB. It was a 137-kilometer non-stop single stage race, 7,000 meters,
7,800
right?
supposedly.
So 8,000 meters of elevation, mate. It's since been dubbed, as we spoke about, folks. If you really want to dig in, we're going to just finish up the last 10 minutes on this. But if you want to hear all about the race, please go back to show 484, where we spoke for about an hour with Tom and Rob about it. But mate, you're towing the start line. You're sort of three ultras into your career, and you're on the start line of one of the hardest races that has been. Really, I mean, there's Barkley. It's been compared with Barkley. It was brutal. Why were you on that start line?
You know, again, it's almost the sense of adventure. That was one reason. But also, you know, the thing for me that's I've learned over the year and a bit is the addictiveness of learning about yourself. So that's very addictive.
Yeah.
And going back to MDS quickly, I learned more about myself in that 7 days than I'd learned in the previous 40 years.
Wow.
Right? And I genuinely mean that. And then over this year of doing Haja 100, we did the 50-50-50.
Yeah, Corsica.
We went to Corsica, which was almost 200 Ks across Corsica. You know, and then this one, it's learning about yourself and what you're capable of, which is an amazing thing.
Yeah.
And then, you know, I completely agree with you that I think everyone who saw UTMB, Oman, you saw the course profile, you're thinking, you know, it's 7.5 to 8,000 meters, vertical 137. You know, it's not it's not that bad. But the terrain when we got out there was. I'm glad to hear that, you know, even the professionals after Oman sort of said it was the hardest thing they've ever done, because it was tough. Like when you're there in the moment, in the situation, like, okay, this is pretty brutal. This is, okay. But you hear about these other races in the world, like Barkley's Marathon, you think, oh my God, these are the hardest things ever. But when you heard the pros say afterwards that was pretty tough, you're like, okay, I'm happy. It almost sounds, it's strange, but 137 Ks almost doesn't do it justice. It felt like it was 250.
Well, mate, it was, I mean, it's the longest single stage race you've ever done.
Yep.
It was a 7:30 p.m. start. There was checkpoints along the way, but you carried pretty much all your own gear until you got to 80K where you got a drop bag. But you were out there for 36 hours, mate.
Yeah.
Like, it's a really long time to be doing running.
Yeah.
I mean, I know there wasn't a whole heap of running, and, you know, again, go and listen to Sean, to Tom and Rob's show. They talk all about how much running it was, but at the same time, mate, it's like you've been awake the whole day. It's now 7:30 p.m. and you're going and doing something physical for 36 hours.
Yeah, I woke up. You try to sleep in late that morning of the race, but I think I woke up around 9 a.m. And even though you want to sleep late, you can't. You try and get a sleep in the afternoon, you can't. And so then you start buzzing. The nervous energy starts.
Yeah.
You know, the race itself, I think Rob and I crossed the line together, and it was about 36 hours and 1 minute or something like that.
Yeah.
Leading up to it, because no one had ever done the course before, I had kind of thought somewhere around 30 hours maybe.
Yeah.
30, 32, 28, something like that.
Yeah.
And, you know, when we got into the terrain, it was something like you've never seen. And running through the night is an amazing thing, because you can't really see that far in front of you.
Yeah.
And so that's a good thing, I suppose, in this terrain. But when the day came, oh, wow. Like, you see the terrain that you're up against and how far to the next checkpoint. And
I think that's a really good point, especially in the mountains, like in Oman, and even, like, I remember when we did the last section of Corsica in the dark and places that I've run in the dark, like, you just can't really see it, so you don't really know, which for some people that'll play tricks on their mind. But when it's daylight, and when it was daylight in Oman, and you can see those canyons, and you know you've got to be on the other side. And then, like, there was the one where we saw you at Alila Hotel, and, like, we saw you a few K before there, and we're like, oh, it's only a few K to the hotel. It was the worst thing we could have said to you. But, you know, and you guys can see the hotel, and you've just got to have gone all the way around that sort of canyon.
So even before that, before we saw you guys, so as the dawn was coming up, the sun was just rising, you come across part of the course, and then there was a huge valley in between where we had to go and the hotel.
Yeah.
And I checked my watch, and it was around about 62 Ks. I'm thinking, okay, there's 20 Ks to go, but I could see the hotel across the valley. Yeah. I could see it maybe 1 kilometer away.
Wow.
And I'm computing in my mind, maybe they've got it wrong. Maybe it's not 20 Ks.
Wow.
But then we had to go down a valley, up a valley, around a valley, down a valley, around a valley, through a valley. It was they circled you around this, and that was the sort of worst part is it was mind games. So you knew where you had to go. You knew the hotel was there, but you had another 20 K of this.
And you're just looking at your watch, just going,
this is just unbelievable. And
it's ticking off at like 1K every 20 minutes.
It's unbelievable because you'd go down, then you'd climb vertically almost up these rock faces, and it was just going slow, and the day was getting hotter and hotter.
Yeah, right.
And you're at altitude, and so things like that just started, and that's probably why Oman was very brutal, because they played mind games with you.
Do you think they did it on purpose, mate? Or do you think that was just...
I think it was... I don't know. I think both. I think that they needed to get the kilometers in, and so they kind of ran it around that. But then also, unless you've actually run a race like this, would you plan it like that? I don't know. Yeah,
it's difficult. I mean, because I remember at one stage where we were up near that road, because we'd walked up the valley in the morning, and we're up near that road, and the course was just... It was almost just sick because it was completely flat, but it just made you go this extra bit of like, it was only 20 meters.
Yeah.
And then go almost back on yourself and then drop into this valley.
Yeah.
And we were stood there and we were just having a bit of fun and taking some pictures and whatever. And I'm like, guys, look at this course. And I don't know the answer. I mean, I don't know if the race, if I know Ian Corliss had on the American... Jason Sharp that won it, and apparently it's either his girlfriend or his wife is the American chick as well. That
the partner. She got third, I think.
She got third, and they were kind of talking about it, whether that is the thing, whether they kind of just make it like that a little bit harder. I know, like obviously we've spoken a little bit about Barkley Marathons, and Barkley Marathons allows us trying to make stuff like it's trying to be a mind game, but it's not really what we've known as the DNA of UTMB, but we saw it in Oman, that's for sure.
Yeah. It was definitely around that 82K mark, or around the hotel where the let's say the halfway point. Yeah. It was a mind game, particularly at that point, and you'd already gone through the night, so you're kind of, you're getting fatigued, and you're thinking, okay, let's just get to this halfway point, get some food in, and then try and keep going, and that was all the mindset. Like, there was, there's so many things that come across you in a race like that. And one of the things is I've always run with poles, right?
Yeah.
And, the first 13 Ks or so was, pretty flat and super easy
part of race, right?
Basically.
Yeah.
And then there gets to a point where you're going up a wadi and then you start your first climb. And I pulled my poles out at that time and one of them broke. Straight away.
Wow.
And the only thing I've ever done with ultras is always run with poles. And there wasn't one second, maybe a millisecond, where I said to myself, okay, let's move on. Just deal with it.
Yeah.
And I think if I hadn't learned lessons earlier in the year, I would have kind of just gone, oh, God, this is going to play with me. This is going to play in my head. This is not this is going to hurt me. And literally, I just, I don't know why, but I just kind of went, all right, move on.
It's the ability, mate, to control the controllables, right?
Yeah.
That you start to learn, I guess.
But it was also about letting go of expectations. So, I've always run with poles, and it's a big thing if you do these sort of races, whether you use poles or not poles or whatever, and I always have. But it was just at a point where I just kind of, it's like I had to reset myself at 13K and go, all right, you're going the next 120K or so without them.
Yeah.
And it's like, just get on with it.
Unbelievable. Mate, you went more than 120. Well, if it was more than 120K from that point. And that took you into, the race started at 7:30 p.m. It took you into a second night.
Mm.
Skipping one night of sleep, most people can get away with it. But then running the whole day, the next day, brutally hot sun, then the temperature dropped at the night. Talk us through the second night on that trail.
That got interesting, and obviously you were there at the halfway with a few of the other guys and the support crew. The support crew was amazing, and I think you said it to us then, or I don't remember when. Maybe it was just before, as night was there, we saw you. But there was a point where you'd said to Rob and I, and it's through your own experience, is that you guys will hallucinate tonight. You've been running for 24 hours. We'd been awake for, I don't know, like 34, 35 hours at the time. You're going to start to hallucinate. It's amazing that you don't actually, so you're sore, yes, the body is fatigued, yes, but you don't really feel tired. You don't feel sleepy.
Right.
There's a lot of, I suppose, adrenaline, cortisol going through your body, which keeps you active and awake.
Yeah.
But then, as you push on further and further, you get more and more fatigued, and that's the case, and was in the case in this race. And there was I remember there was about 11K downhill section on a road.
Yes.
Which was, you were running in almost talcum powder type dust and sand, and that was almost the worst part because you're running downhill for 11Ks first of all, and if anyone knows downhill, that's what hurts.
It hurts.
And then this dust you're running in just kicking up into your lungs, and you couldn't quite breathe properly. This is getting into your head, but later in the night you sort of got to a point where hallucinations started, but you don't really realize that they're hallucinations until kind of afterwards. Yeah. Because you're completely lucid. Like, you know where you are, you know what you're doing, you know exactly what's happening, but then you're seeing things. It's wild. Like I remember Rob and I had sort of, the first night we were playing leapfrog, and we're all running our own race, and then we ended up sticking together, and we were pushing each other, which was fantastic. And I remember at one point I was in front of him on the trail, and I turned around and said, "Oh, Rob, we were kind of expecting another checkpoint." I said, "Hey, Rob, checkpoint's just here." And I saw the checkpoint. I saw it. I saw the little tent. I saw the light. I saw the table with the food on it. I saw the water. I saw the people standing around in the tent, and that's what the checkpoints kind of were. Yeah. And I saw it just around the corner on the trail. And as I turned to say this to him, I looked back, and it was gone. And I was kind of like, okay. And I can swear I can still describe it to you today. And there was other things you saw, and it was, there was one point where I was looking down at my feet, but
having a piss.
Urinating, and the rocks were melting away from me. Like I saw them melt away from me. And I kind of stood back from that, and I went, "Whoa!"
Yeah, because it's steep. So if they go, you die.
It was off a cliff.
Yeah.
And I was like, "What is going on here?" But I knew where I was, and I knew what I was doing. And so it's amazing what the body will tell you or do to you to say, "Hey, stop this. This is silly. You're now actually starting to do stuff that we don't want to do. You should stop."
How did you get through it, mate?
There wasn't one point in the race where I said to myself, I'm going to quit. So, for example, the Haja 100, I said, you can just roll your ankle and get out of
50,
this. There wasn't
an excuse.
one part of that race where my mind said, I want out. And I think it's because I've learned a lot about myself, and I've learned a lot about these sort of races, but that was also my goal.
Right.
And so, and of course it helps. I mean, Rob and I were together, and we were pushing each other, encouraging each other. And I think from hearing from other accounts in that race, people who ended up getting through it and finishing. I mean, I think there was only 50 or 60 people who finished out of, I don't know, a couple of hundred.
I think they had, I think it was a little bit more. I think
maybe more,
40% completed it.
Yeah, 40%.
But mate, I mean, we were in the checkpoint and people just coming in, ripping their bibs off and saying, I'm out. It's,
and I think people who ended up finishing it ended up running as partners or almost in teams. And even if you're competing against each other, I mean, Rob and I happen to know each other, but but I think you kind of almost needed that on that race. I mean, it was hectic. It was tough.
Do you think the fact that race, like if you look at the second night, you were around, when we last saw you were around 100K, just over 100K in. That was just before the white sort of powder. So you sort of had 30-something K to go. And worst case scenario at 3Ks an hour, which in some of that section you were slower. You were in the brutal wall. You were slower. Do you think the fact that you're like, right, if I get through this night, this job's done, and I'm finished.
So you start calculating. So you just, when you get sort of that far into the race, you start calculating to yourself, saying, well, you know what, there's only 17K left. Maybe that's going to take X amount of hours. We'll make it by 2 a.m. And then as you're going on, you're pushing on because things are getting harder and harder. And actually the terrain towards the end was super tough. You had almost a vertical K, or what they say, a VK.
Yeah.
It was actually 1.2 kilometers up within about 3 kilometers
in distance.
In linear distance. Yeah. And I mean, that took us, I think that took Rob and I 2.5 hours, 2 hours 45.
Right.
And, it was sketchy.
Yeah.
Like if we'd done that, we did that at about, I don't know, midnight, 2 a.m. If we had done that in the day, that would have scared me because there were sketchy parts to that.
Yeah.
But then as you went on, there was, you got higher and it got colder and super windy, and it was probably below zero, I think, with wind chill when we got to the top of that climb. So the temperature swings kind of start hitting you, and then you just start looking at your watch and trying to calculate how much longer have I got to go.
Yeah.
I've got 13 Ks or I've got 14 Ks, but actually how long is that going to take?
Yeah, time-wise. I think that's probably one of the biggest challenges, isn't it, mate? And it plays a little bit on your mind because, even if we go back to that initial run that you did, you ran at like 6.5 minutes a K, it was 11 Ks along the beach, like... You're almost dreaming of 6.5 minutes a K.
That would have been lovely
in these scenarios.
I mean, I think guys who win these races average about that sort of speed, right? But it's because the terrain is so brutal.
Yeah.
And I don't even remember the data that I had from it, but it was super, 36 hours, 137 Ks. You can do the maths,
right?
The
maths on it, yeah.
And even the last checkpoint said there was 2K or 3K to go, and that took almost an hour.
Yeah, just coming down.
And that was downhill.
Yeah.
And it was just, it was, and
it's incredible, mate.
Yeah.
Well, mate, we've rambled on for about an hour, and that's probably almost enough. But, mate, just to acknowledge what you've done in ultra running in the last year it's phenomenal, but it also shows that, this sounds probably a bit harsh, but a washed up 40-year-old rugby player can do it. Anyone can really do it, right?
And that's the thing, like, as long as you have a goal and you decide to change things.
Yeah.
For me, I didn't have a catalyst in my life to say, that happened to me, I can change it. Because some people have that moment, right?
Yeah.
It was for me just kind of waking up and going, I have to change something.
Got to get something.
I got to get out of a rut that I'm in, and work was good and everything was good, but I got to change something. Yeah. And that's where I'd started, and the journey continues. It's been a ride so far.
It's incredible, mate. Not only are you into it, you've got your brother into it, so I get 2 clients out of this, which is just fantastic.
He's just signed up to his first ultra.
Exactly, mate. And he actually sent me a message the other day, and he wants to do something a bit longer and with us and all these plans. And I reminded him that he's having his second child, but that's the thing. Mate, really appreciate the time. And again, congratulations, mate. It's probably harsh to call you a washed-up rugby player because you're now a very accomplished ultra runner, mate. And I think what you achieved, in your first race in the MDS, and then that single stage UTMB Oman. Anyone who's thinking about getting into ultra, I would suggest perhaps a different entry route.
It's probably not traditionally. Yeah,
it's not traditional, but you're not known for doing things traditionally, mate. You're all in. Congratulations, Hurls. We look forward to following your journey, and mate, in a year's time, we'll get you back on and see what else you've done.
Let's see. There's some big things coming in 2019. That's for sure. I'll tell you that
awesome,
much.
Mate. Great job.
Cheers.
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 Great job.
Cheers.